Welcome to Three Inning Fan, the podcast with me, Kelly Franco. I am so excited to introduce a very special guest tonight. Not Guetti is a well-known Twitter, X, MLB personality, and I think most of you are already following him on Twitter. But if you aren't, you really should be, because when you follow Not Guetti, you will find yourself dropping his acronyms like Nepta and TMWU and randomly responding big if true when confronted with random pieces of information. Not Gaetti, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Hey Kelly, it's a pleasure to be here. I have had so much fun getting to know you, getting to interact with you. It's really been fun to navigate this whole sort of experience together, and I certainly appreciate coming on and chatting with you.
It's great. And I too love that we've kind of been on parallel tracks on X for these past couple of years. And I've been following you that whole time, and I have found your posts to be informative and enjoyable and just extremely knowledgeable. And you not only have hordes of followers, but you also have some really significant people in the baseball world following you. So, can you tell me about Not Guetti and what inspired you to create this mustachioed man of mystery?
Well, I made my account for the first time in 2016. I had not been a Twitter user prior to that. I've been a lifelong baseball fan, of course. I don't know what prompted it. I had a few friends that I went to school with that I just never stopped talking ball with, and it was a tight circle, and we could talk about these random players from the 90s and recall these, moments that might not have been huge to anybody else, but that we remembered so vividly from watching games growing up. And you know, it occurred to me that there had to be some sort of way to communicate with other like-minded folks more broadly. And I just remember some of my very first posts back in 2016. I would tweet at Dean Palmer and Kenny Lofton and ask if they remembered hitting specific home runs or making specific plays, and got to sort of get the first taste of enjoying this like retrospective, sort of nostalgic take on baseball with some of the players themselves. And I got a huge kick out of that. Did not do much with it until during the pandemic when, a lot of stuff got canceled. Spent a lot more time at home, spent a lot more time on social media. I revisited the Not Guetti thing, and uh, it took on a few different flavors, maybe a few different roles. I spent some time as really sort of like a get off my lawn type caricature. There was definitely some, I don't know, more of like a bad guy kind of role. But after a few years, I was really searching for what the sweet spot was. And ultimately, I seized on basically sort of baseball storytelling. And really, that's kind of like a broad term, but I think the things that baseball storytelling encompasses to me is, you draw in the personalities and the history. You still want it to be information rich, but there's elements of humor. There's elements of advocating for some of the unsung heroes, the underrated players. That's been one of my big things for the last few years. And it's that combination of make it engaging, make it fun, make it humorous, make it memorable. And there's an educational component certainly too. I mean, there's so many people who reach out and are like, this is a player I've never heard of. I consider myself a baseball fan. I've never heard of this guy. I'm going on Baseball Reference. I'm going to look him up. Or, there's people who are like, I haven't heard that name in 25 years. Like, thank you. Or somebody will be like, was my mom's favorite player. Like, this means so much to me. This is really great. Thank you for doing this. And I never set out to think of Not Gaetti as a public service or something like this, but I have been shocked and humbled by the number of people that have reached out and expressed that some of these posts are legitimately very meaningful to them, that they share them with their family members, that Not Guetti tweets are things that they talk about, which is great because not enough people talk about Not Guetti tweets.
Well, I think you really nailed it when you talked about presenting these kind of random baseball facts in a really informative way, because some people, if they tried to do that, they would be total bores. But what you've done is you've packaged these total random collection of baseball facts in a way that is just entertaining and digestible, and they're just little morsels of information. And one of my favorite things that you have is NEPTA. Can you tell us what NEPTA is?
So NEPTA is an acronym that stands for Not Enough People Talk About, and it's become my main recurring shtick. And you know, the thing about NEPTA is there could be any number of reasons why not enough people talk about somebody. It doesn't mean that there are these flash in the pan one hit wonders that people don't remember. Um, there are Hall of Famers that have been featured on NEPTA. There are active players in the game right now that have been featured on NEPTA. Having a plaque in Cooperstown doesn't mean that enough people talk about you. And so if I feature a superstar, there are there's more than a kernel of truth about the fact that they're still underrated and that not enough people talk about them. If you think about somebody like Frank Robinson, who to me is one of the consensus underrated guys who happens to also be an inner circle Hall of Famer. His resume is incredible. MVP in both leagues, won a triple crown, first black manager in both leagues, was a player manager, homered in his first at bat as a player manager, like what had his number retired by three teams. Like the guy had an incredible career, almost 600 home runs, almost 3,000 hits. And yet 45 writers did not vote for him for the Hall of Fame.
Is that right?
45 voters left Frank Robinson off their ballot. And if you think about that, it's like, it's mind blowing. You look at Frank Robinson and Stan Musial, those two guys on paper, their resumes stack up to pretty much anybody that's ever played the game, but you don't hear them mentioned in the same conversations about who's on hitter Rushmore, you know? And so for any number of reasons, guys who are really, really great, but then also guys who were cogs in the machine, just sort of role players, have all been featured. Position players, pitchers, they're all over the map. But I've really enjoyed looking into the careers of these guys. And like you said, if you're just presenting stats, it can be pretty boring. I don't want to be talking at people or sound like the tweets are AI because I'm just pulling from a spreadsheet. I think one of the biggest keys to doing what I do is adding context. So you take somebody like Hank Aaron. I think Hank Aaron is somewhat underrated, in fact. Um, his counting totals, his consistency, his durability, all off the charts. He would, all peak, no valleys. This guy, his whole career for 23 years. And the kind of context that I try to add, I did a NEPTA post about Hank Aaron. I mentioned not only, are his 6,856 total bases the most ever, but also to show the consistency, his 15 times reaching 300 total bases in a season is the most ever. And oh, by the way, if you convert total bases into distance, he's 11 miles worth of total bases ahead of second place.
And I loved that you did that calculation, not Gaetti. And you wrote the most beautiful thing to me about Hank Aaron. And well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but I found it so touching in many ways. But first, I just wanted to get a little bit about you. I mean, first of all, I'm very pleased to see that you are not, in fact, a cardboard cutout wearing a construction hat and a mustache, but You're actually a human being wearing a construction hat and a mustache. So, congratulations on that.
I am actually a cardboard cutout. It's very convincing.
Yeah,
But I
well, it moved
appreciate
in
that.
all the planes, which is good.
Mhm.
So can you tell me where did your logo come from?
It's funny. The original Not Guetti avatar, which by the way, I made using a template for a construction site hard hat safety sign that I found on the internet. So it is in fact a hard hat. That is the joke. I didn't set out to do that, but it looked the part. Originally, I had put a Minnesota Twins logo on it because obviously Not Guetti is an homage to MLB superstar Gary Gaetti.
Yeah, I want to hear about
Um,
this too.
so what we can talk about G-Man in a bit, but as far as the avatar goes, it was this with a Twins logo. And one year, my beautiful wife, Mrs. Not Gaetti, tried to make me a coffee mug of the Not Gaetti avatar. And the company that she uploaded the picture to said they couldn't do it because the Twins logo was protected intellectual property. And so the coffee mug showed up with a blank hard hat. And that was a reminder that we had to kind of start over and do something a little different. And so my friend Rocco Constantino, who
Rocco, he's a great guy. Yeah, I love Rocco.
if you don't follow him on Twitter, you definitely should. He's an amazing guy. Um, he came up with this idea to do keep the Twins colors, but just make it NG, and nobody's going to have issues with that. So that's Rocco's idea. All the credit to him.
I had no idea he had a role in that. Wow,
Hmm.
that's great. And so I really do like that story, but tell us a little more about Gary Gaetti.
So one of the recurring themes is this tier of player that is kind of sub superstar, but above just like your, spare part. And I think Gaetti really epitomizes that tier of player. He was so good at so many different things. He won 4 Gold Gloves at third base. He hit 360 home runs. He led the Twins to a world championship in 1987. He played for 20 years in the big leagues. He, late in his career, he had some big playoff pushes with the Cardinals. He got traded to the Cubs and just caught fire down the stretch for them one season. Guys on the team really looked up to him as sort of a leader and a mentor and a guy that had been around. Um, you know, Probably a consensus non-Hall of Famer, and yet great on both sides of the ball and just a terrific player. So few guys play 20 years in the big leagues. I mean, that's that's legit. And he is, like I said, he epitomizes sort of the tier of guys that I set out to celebrate. I'm not tweeting at, Derek Jeter, do you remember making the flip play, right? It's like I'm like Dean Palmer. Do you remember the time you hit this nuke 600 feet at Tiger Stadium? And it's that brings me a lot of joy. And I have talked to Gary Gaetti. We text each other sometimes. He's aware of my account. He and his wife think it's very funny. Um, he's, he's a great dude. He's fun to talk baseball with. Um, and just like every time I talk to him, I'm inspired by what a fierce competitor he was. And he would, say things about how like you find some way to help your team every single game. If you're in the lineup, you have to do something to try to make your team better off. If you're 0 for 4 at the plate, like bear down in the field, make the plays. If you make an error, like you have another chance, through the lineup to make an impact with the stick. Just do something. Find a way to put pressure on the pitcher. Find a way to put pressure on the defense. And I think that mentality served him really well and is part of the reason that he spent 20 years in the big leagues.
It's really inspiring when you think about it. And kind of applicable to all of us in our everyday lives. It's like we can't be superheroes at everything every day, but we can go out and do our best and, do our best in our work or with our family. So I guess there's maybe a little bit of NEPTA in all of us.
That's what I like to hear.
So, and you don't just have the NEPTA, you also have this man was underrated and a lot of good catchphrases. But let's be honest, there is one that can bring a grown man to his knees, shaking with fear. And that is when you hurl a chief. Now, what does it mean when somebody gets chiefed? And how do I avoid that happening to me?
So there's obviously a lot of toxicity on social media. Like that's not news to anybody. Um, there are people that are really sort of classless and hateful in the way they respond to things. And I never wanted to be that. Like, I don't think that's a great look. But at the same time, there are people with ludicrous baseball takes that are deeply offensive in, one way or another who, I thought about like, how do I send a message that like I'm irate and this is absurd, but I'm not going to be the guy that drops F-bombs, right? So I say, listen, Chief. And then I explain why they are completely wrong. And so, you know, I it's become such a term of art that I try not to use chief lightly, which is insane, right? I mean, but the people who follow me know that, you call Harold Baines a compiler, like you're a chief. And I'm gonna say, look, chief, you
You know,
know,
you're actually a pretty gallant guy because I think you chiefed someone for me once. I had said something about the National League being called the senior circuit, and some guy kind of chimed in, like, well, it's called the senior circuit because it's older than the American League. And I think you kind of chiefed me for him, and you were like, hey, mansplainer, chief, she knows. That was pretty nice of you.
yeah, I mean, look, I will go to bat, pun intended, for my friends, and I don't like to see my friends get mansplained to and have be made to feel like they don't know baseball because the people that I talk to, and I spend a lot of time on there every day, right? It's like I know who knows ball and who doesn't know ball, and yeah, if somebody gives you a hard time and they're being a chief, I'll instruct them.
So I hate to use the I word, but let's talk about this word influencer. And I kind of hate the I word because it's an bad pun, but eye roll of a word if I ever heard one. And it kind of conjures up this image of people who want maybe, free Chinese food or motor oil or baby wipes or anything in exchange for promoting them. So I'm not going to call you an influencer, but the irony is that you are literally influencing baseball from what I can see. In fact, I mean, I'm sure you have examples, but one that stands out to me was you literally had the Seattle Mariners bring back an event because you posted about it. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so you remember the great power hitter Jay Buhner, who a lot of people know him from Seinfeld too, because Frank Costanza was irate that the Yankees traded him. He was in fact a Yankees prospect, came up with the Yankees. They traded him to Seattle for Ken Phelps, because all my baseball people say Ken Phelps, Ken Phelps. And he blossomed into this tremendous power hitter. I think he had 3 straight years of 40 plus homers. And for a while in the mid 90s, he had this bizarre hair pattern, haircut thing. And they did this promotion where if you agreed to get your hair buzzed like Jay Buhner, you got into the game for free. So they called it Buhner Buzz Night. And I think they did it like a few times. But then for decades, he retired, I think 2001. So for decades, this wasn't a thing. he remains a fan favorite in Seattle. He goes to events for the Mariners all the time. Um, but they didn't do that specific promotion. And so when I did my Nepta post about Jay Buhner, I mentioned that. I was like, they had this Buhner buzz cut day thing. And it was like 33 hours later, the Seattle Mariners announced Buhner Buzz Night is back. This was
That
in
is awesome. I mean, how did you find out about that? Did somebody alert you?
I just saw it on my timeline. Like the Mariners posted it and I was like, hang on. So that was like April, I think. And so they announced it for mid-June. It gave like a 2 months heads up. But I saw Buhner Buzz Night is back. And I was like, let that sink in, folks. Like
Another one of your catchphrases.
that is NEPTA grassroots advocacy in action. Like it doesn't happen every day, but sometimes it's like, what we do kind of is important. Like it has an impact. It does.
It's true. I think we have to think of another word for influencer so, we don't get mixed up with people looking for free meals. Although I wouldn't mind free meals myself, but
Yeah, like I'm not trying to influence people necessarily to behave a certain way or like shop at a certain place, but um, I can accept the term influencer to the extent it encourages people to think about baseball differently, baseball players, baseball history. Um, like I said before, it's about adding context, about adding new ways for people to look at things, um, and consider how it all fits into the very long and colorful and interesting and vibrant history of baseball.
you know, when I talk to you, you have a very serious way about you. But I also know that you have a tremendous sense of humor from your posts because you're funny. I mean, you're actually a freaking hilarious guy. So when did you figure out that you could crack people up? I mean, were you the class clown? When did this dawn on you?
Don't think I was really the class clown, and I don't consider myself like a comedian by any means. Like I don't do stand up and things like that. But I do think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, that humor is a pretty essential part of storytelling because it's relatable. Like if you can make somebody laugh while they're learning, like they're gonna remember the stuff that you post about. If it's dry regurgitation of stats, like there's spreadsheets for that. There's places you can go for that. It doesn't stick with you, right? It's not memorable, but if you can make somebody feel a certain way while they're reading a post, like for instance, if I'm talking about somebody who really is like criminally underrated, somebody like Carlos Delgado, who fell off the Hall of Fame ballot on his first year because he didn't get 5%. Like if you can get to the end of the post, I want you to be feeling like a little bit of outrage on his behalf, right? If it's somebody who had humorous things going on in their career that, make them memorable. I mean, for Danny Tartable, I mentioned his Seinfeld appearance. For Buhner, I mentioned the buzz cut night. And it was like those are not statistically significant in any way, shape, or form. Those are not things that were considered by the writers, but people are going to remember it because like it made them chuckle.
Well, you do it well. And of course, nobody, everyone's going to want me to ask your true identity, which I wouldn't. But I was instead wondering if maybe you could tell us your social security number.
7.
And I noticed that you've got a mustache, but there's no beard. Are you thinking you might be traded to the Yankees and you just want to be prepared?
Yeah, I want to be able to play for all 30 teams.
Oh, that's good. And how many have you played for so far?
So far, none, but
Yeah. Well, you're a young man. You're a young man. Now, I have to say, and ladies, because I know we've got some female listeners out there, the hearts are going to be breaking all over the internet because I have to tell you that Not Guetti is taken. And you mentioned Mrs. Not Guetti. And can you tell us maybe a tiny bit about her? I mean, at least does she like baseball? That's what I'm wondering.
She does like baseball.
Oh, thank God.
We watch a lot of games together during the season, especially during the postseason. Like we'll try to watch most of the postseason games together. Um, we when we lived in Baltimore, we were walking distance from Camden Yards and used to go to O's games. And being able to walk to a stadium on your own 2 feet is a really great feeling because we all know the headache of driving, parking, mass transit, things like that. Uh, I It was never lost on me how cool it is to be able to walk to a big league stadium. Currently, we go to a lot of double A games, and then we watch the big clubs on television. And she's yeah, she's great to watch a game with. She's got the players that she likes, and she. I post about this a lot, but she does play MLB Showdown with me. And that, if you don't play Showdown, you should, but it's a card game from 25 years ago. The set of guys that we play with are all either 2000 or 2001 players. So the guys that she's the most familiar with are people from back then and people that are current and like not so much in between. And that's really, really fun because that's sort of my baseball nostalgia wheelhouse too. And yeah, I mean, we have a blast. I'm so getting away with something. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God. And she's smart too, because you've posted that she is going to be Dr. Nakayeti at some point in the near future. And you posted the picture of her from when you got married, and she's gorgeous. So you have a gorgeous and smart Mrs. Nakayeti. And I have to ask, I mean, how did you get such a great catch? Was it the hat, you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, people love a man in a hard hat, I guess. I don't
Right.
know.
Right. A manly man in a construction hat. That must have been it. And is it true that you took a baseball card to Gary Gaetti on your honeymoon?
Yes, the I have a Gary Gaetti card that's lived in my wallet for pushing 20 years. And I think everybody should have a wallet card. Some people do the thing where they replace their wallet card every year and you give it 365 days. And you're supposed to take a picture of it when it's new, when you put it in, you take a picture of what it looks like a year later, and then you put a different guy in for the next year.
I
So
didn't know that was a thing.
that's a thing. There are people who share their wallet cards uh on Twitter, and it's fun. You see how beat up does a card get living in your wallet for a year, and then you switch to somebody else. Others do it with the phone card. You put it in the see-through cell phone case.
Yeah.
So the transparent iPhone thing, and you swap it out every year. But I don't switch up my wallet card. It is my Gaetti Showdown card, and he's like I said, close to 20 years he's been in there. And yes, he did come on our honeymoon. Yes.
What a travel companion he is. Now, I have to say, we all have different ways that we enjoy the game, and you're a master at the stats, but you don't neglect the stories of the game either. And that's important to me because I prefer the stories over the stats. And I think they're both important. I don't want to write off either one of them. But I love the stories of the game. And you sometimes do these longer length pieces. And I love them because I kind of feel like I read a biography of someone in about 6 minutes. They're like a little biography, and they're sometimes quite poignant. Can you tell us a little bit about Not Guetti at large?
Yeah. So being able to connect with people in different ways is big with me. And on on Twitter, people are sort of accustomed to the sound bites and the snippets because it used to be completely character limited for everybody. Right now we have the option to write longer tweets, but there's still just posts that eventually get buried in the timeline, get lost in the ether. And you can't do, I don't know, it's hard to connect on just very, very long tweets. It's not what people are looking for. But I've started using the articles feature in the last couple of years because you can do different formatting and embed pictures along the way and use headings and things like that. But I know that there's an audience that sort of wants to take a slightly deeper dive without actually going and reading a biography. And so periodically, I will write one of these articles about really whatever I want to. And so that's the essence of the name too, right? It's evocative of the old at-large editor of newspapers who are not on a specific beat, not on a specific subject matter, who don't have to write about a particular topic. The at-large editor could write a column about whatever they want to. And so that's sort of, I'm the baseball within baseball, you know, that's what I wanted to do. Whether I'm thinking about just putting the greatness of a Hank Aaron or a Brooks Robinson in perspective, um, or talking about somebody who's maybe not a Hall of Famer, but is, unfairly remembered for one particular moment. I did an article about Bill Buckner for that. And, I'm proud of them. They're because they're what I want to say about these particular guys. And they're all between like 1,000 and 1,400 words. So they're not super long, but they're a lot more informative and a lot more reader friendly than just posting them. And so you can find all of those under the articles tab on my profile. And I hope to keep adding to those periodically. But yeah, I really enjoy writing, and I think that's sort of one of the ways that I can best connect with people that are interested. And, I feel fortunate that although my audience is not huge, it's very engaged. And a lot of my followers do read the articles, do enjoy them, do provide feedback on them. And, it's nice because I want to give this community of folks what they are looking for. And, you know, as much of the credit goes to the followers as to me, honestly. They have created this world for us to visit every single day to just talk baseball and reminisce and, debate. And it's, I love it. It's incredible.
Well, I think that a lot of the credit belongs to you because you've really created this way for us to look at baseball in a way that maybe we hadn't been looking at it before. And I love that. I really do. And your piece about Hank Aaron, I found particularly moving because you talked about his grace and his humility. And those are two of my favorite qualities. And I think that when we just look at things like the numbers, that we miss out on a lot. And you made sure we didn't miss out on that.
Yeah, for sure. He's, you know, more often than not, he's my personal GOAT in baseball, because he was so durable and so consistently excellent for so long. And he did it under immense pressure and just dealing with unspeakable, difficulties and challenges. I heard that in 1974, the year that he was going to break Babe Ruth's record, that he received more pieces of mail than any American citizen that didn't hold public office. And almost all of it was just racist hate mail. And I mean, can you imagine? I
Oh, that's
to
heartbreaking.
to go out and do your job at the level he did it, despite everything else. They had to get like security guards to watch over his kids and stuff when they went to road games, and just the off the field existence was so challenging, so needlessly challenging while he is going out and trying to play baseball at a high level. And he did. And he was never anything but all class. And after his playing career, he remained one of the most popular figures in the whole game. He was so visible at baseball events with the Braves especially, and I mean, he went all over the world doing events and everything. I posted that picture yesterday of him and Sadaharu O in
That was an
1991.
epic picture.
And they became friends in the 1970s. They faced off in a home run hitting contest, and there's pictures of them together all the way from the 1970s through the end of Hank Aaron's life. And when you think about the scope of greatness, between those two guys, and they just love baseball and sharing it with people all over the world. And I just he had perhaps not only the most satisfying baseball career, but the most satisfying baseball life.
Yeah, I really loved how you got that point across because we really got to see him in all his glory. Well, not you and me because we might have been a few years too late to see it live, but certainly wonderful to know about. And I love the way you just kind of gave that all to us in just a few minutes of reading. So love the at-larges. Now I'm going to let me introduce a completely made up segment that I just made up right now, and it's going to be called Throw Me a Crumb. Okay, so my completely made up segment, Throw Me a Crumb, is going to ask you, throw us a crumb. If I were to ask you for maybe tell us something about yourself that would surprise our listeners, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be personal, it could be anything, it could be you really like to binge watch The Real Housewives of New Jersey, or you like to run in slow motion to the theme from Chariots of Fire. I mean, anything, a crumb, throw us a crumb, not Gaetti.
I see. I really was not prepared for this.
Well,
Interesting things about me, huh? I am obsessed with 80s music. So I'm always playing the 80s channel on Sirius XM in my car.
all right. I like it. I like
You
it. You wear
know,
leg warmers when you're doing it. Maybe do a little Jane Fonda workout.
I do. I wear them actually on all of my limbs, not just my legs. And I turn the volume up really high, and that's one of my guilty pleasures. And I on Twitter, I also do a lot of the things I say when, right? That's one of my recurring things, and so many of them are about things I say when the bouncer is throwing me into my Uber, things I say when the bartender cuts me off, right? I really don't like drinking that much. So that's something you might not glean from my tweets. And so when I'm talking about things I say after my second Michelob Ultra, like that's the kind of lightweight I am. So total lightweight.
Well, I've gotten to be kind of a lightweight too in my old age.
Hmm.
So let me tell you, if you're a lightweight now, wait till you get to be my age because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I'm a cheap date.
Now, you have merch, okay? And one of my favorites is the combined no hitters aren't real t-shirt, except that, and because you follow me, you already know this, but I actually would go a step further because I don't even think combined no hitters, I don't think those words should be uttered out loud together. I think it's just wrong, kind of like white Zinfandel or my husband's favorite, honey, would you like to go camping? I mean, there are words that just shouldn't be said together out loud. But anyway, it is kind of a good and remarkable t-shirt. Can you tell us a little bit about your merch and where we can check it out?
Yes. So Obvious Shirts does all of the Not Guetti merch, including the this looks kind of a lot like me, but
It
we'll
looks
see. What do you think?
remarkably like you. Yeah. I could
Um,
get one of those.
they
Obvious shirts?
Obvious Shirts. They're a tremendous company. They started a few years ago in Chicago. The guy who runs it, Joe Obvious, I think he made his first shirt was Jake Arrieta is good at baseball and wore it to Wrigley Field. And Arrieta happened to, throw a complete game or a no hitter or something. And everybody thought he was clairvoyant and was like, how can I get this shirt? Like, can you make other shirts? And he's an awesome dude. They make amazing stuff. And the funniest thing that happened, which you may have already seen because I posted about it recently, was that I had a meeting with them back in uh, August or something, and it had been scheduled for like a week. And then the night before, Joe texted me. He's like, "Listen, I need to move our meeting because Sammy Sosa is only available at the time we're scheduled for." And so I told him, well, it takes 360 homer seasons to bump Not Guetti, so I guess Sammy Sosa qualifies. But that's,
Yeah.
I mean, talk about like a pinch me moment. Like, I need to move you because Sammy Sosa. And, I'm just happy to be a part of that. I wear the stuff every day, honestly. It's super comfortable. There's a link in my bio, or you can just go to Obvious Shirts and check out all of their collections. I'm in there. He's making the Sammy Sosa merch now, and it's beautiful. I mean, I think Sammy and the Cubs are going to have somewhat of a reconciliation, and I'm excited to see Mr. 609 back in baseball because, you know, he really was such a dynamic and exciting player in the late 90s, early 2000s, just did tremendous things, was a fan favorite. And I always hoped that he would come back to Chicago and, get back on good terms with baseball.
Yeah, Sammy and the Cubs are reunited and it feels so good. And say what you want about Sammy, but him and Mark McGuire rekindled baseball after it had been through a really dark time after the 94 strike.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember checking box scores every morning with Father Not Gaetti and being like, did he hit a home run? And he'd be like, well, McGuire hit 2 home runs. And it's like, oh my God. You know,
Right? And that's
they
how baseball brings us together. And people have been doing that for 120 years. DiMaggio's hitting streak. You could, from what I know, talking to people from that era, you could just in the bank line say, hey, did he get a hit? You know, and people know what you're talking about. And not to be corny, but, it brings us together. It brings generations together. It's a special thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, the biggest difference today is just that there are so many alternatives competing for everybody's time and attention. Um, you know, between just how many TV shows and movies you have at your fingertips on demand anytime you want with streaming everything, all kinds of other events that you could go to, like video games, you name it, stuff that didn't exist many decades ago on a large scale, other professional sports, even, baseball used to be the thing, and now baseball has to be something that we choose to make room for in our lives. And so, to the extent that I can give people reasons to choose baseball over something else because, they take an interest in it or a particular player or they want to follow a particular team, I love being able to play even the tiniest role in that.
And you do. And maybe it's a good time to wrap this up with my closer. And you know about my closer because you are a faithful follower of me. And I end every show with what's good to eat while watching the ball game. So let me ask you, Not Gaetti, what's your favorite thing to eat while watching the ball game?
So for watching a game at home, we are big pizza fiends.
Mm.
Like you name it. We don't have like a specific go-to necessarily, but big pizza folks at home. If we're at the ballpark, like I said, I went to a lot of Orioles games. Camden Yards has Boog's Barbecue. So obviously named for Boog Powell, the great power hitting first baseman who yes, I did a Nepta post of Boog Powell. So I do a pulled pork sandwich with potato chips absolutely covered in Old Bay and a Bud Light.
That sounds amazing. And what kind of barbecue is it? Is it ribs or pulled
Uh,
pork?
yeah, I do pulled pork, but they do like brisket. They do everything.
That sounds amazing. I've been to Camden Yards, but I actually haven't seen a game there. So I got to get there for a game and try some Boog's barbecue. I love it.
Yeah, it's a must do. And I actually one of the last times I went there was for Adley Rutschman's big league debut. and we saw his first hit ever, which was a triple.
That's amazing. He is such an exciting player to watch, and I know he had a little bit less of a year than he was hoping for last year, and hopefully he'll bounce back this year. And hopefully the Orioles will make some acquisitions before opening day that will make their fans excited.
I think he started hot and it took like a foul tip off the hand. It wasn't the same after that, but I think if he's at full health, he's one of the top catchers in the game for sure.
So, to all our listeners, you really should be following Not Guetti on X. It's NotGaetti. You're probably already following him because all the cool people are. And Not Guetti, it has been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Sounds great. Everybody, we'll see you at the next show next week. Good night.